recording. Yeah, it is. All right. So for roll call, we have Chair Myers, Alder Haniro, Don Knorr, and Carrie Schuffner joining us. So we do have a quorum of 4 members present.
All right, with a quorum, meeting is called to order. First item on the agenda are the minutes from 3/11/24. I apologize for missing that meeting, Don. I had a 101-degree fever. Figured y'all.
We were grateful that you didn't show up.
Yeah. Are there any corrections that people would like to offer for the minutes?
Nope.
All right, hearing no corrections requested, I accept the minutes as they are recorded. Next item on our agenda is the Lake Street and Dewey Street reconstruction temporary limited easement at Century Harbor Condominiums 23-122.
Right, so Mark Collins, who's the president of the condo board, condo association, and I have been talking about things we can do while we're out there, some of which are a little bit beyond normal, but I think appropriate for the situation that we've got. But what we'll need is a temporary easement for equipment operations, some excavation and grading, because the water line that we're trying to replace is right near the edge of our easement. Part of the bigger problem is that the water and sewer are sharing an easement and it's only 20 feet. And normally we'd get 30 feet for something like this, but back then apparently we didn't. So they've been really good and cooperative in terms of helping us get this thing replaced. I could go to the terms if anyone's interested, I think. You know, so the first one is whatever we have to take out landscaping wise from the easement areas will provide compensation. That's pretty consistent with what we've been doing elsewhere, like on Parmenter Street. Those temporary easements are all the same deal. Pleasant View Road went pretty much the same way. Ingress egress is really standard language. Temp facilities is pretty standard language. There are some precast stepping stones that are just on the ground. They're the kind of things that you just pick them up and move them off to the side. We would do that anyway, but we went and wrote it down. Raising the storm sewer cast into grade, again, is one of those things we don't ordinarily run into these, but we have some really large rectangular grates. Well, actually, these are lids. And they actually have 2 rectangular lids on one giant rectangular casting. Number one, they're heavy, but number 2, they have a propensity for falling into the hole, which takes a crane to lift them back out. So we're trying to replace those wherever we can. And we bridge over those holes with sheet steel and then cut a circular hole in them for a regular round casting, which can't fall in the hole.
How old are these things?
A lot of those were from the 70s,
Okay.
late 60s, that those were put in.
So before people figured out that the round wouldn't fall.
They're awful. I don't know what the real goal was, if it was easier access, but they're pretty big. They're like 3 feet by 4 feet.
Yeah.
It's not insignificant. In fact, one came down once after my head had been in the hole. That was a little dicey too. And then the last one, which we don't ordinarily do, but in this case, there are some fence panels running across our easement. There shouldn't be a fence there at all, but there is. And I offered that if the contractor can take it apart and salvage it, they could put it back together. It's built in panels on a post, so I think it should be pretty easy. All I told Mark is we can't make any promises, but we can have the contractor give it a good faith try. So that's the guts of it. The condo association, I had heard from Mark, approved this. They authorized him to sign it. I said, well, I still have to get permissions and go through our council, but I'm recommending in favor of it.
I move,
I'll go.
pass it on. Okay, but, sorry,
I
It
Carrie.
was
was
gonna make-
close, it was close.
I think Don beat you to it by about half a second, Carrie.
That's okay, I'll second it then.
All right.
All right.
I just had a question about the costs, Sean. So the, aside from the $1 that we'll have to pay and the landscaping, I mean, are these costs built into the estimate that we got from
The shrubs are not.
the shrubs or not? Okay,
Um,
what's typical for expenses like that?
Well, that's where I went and looked at Parmenter Street,
Yeah.
and Pleasant View Road to figure out, well, what did we pay there? Because that was built into the assessment for purchasing those temporary limited easements, and that's about what their price was.
Okay.
I know, it seems like you could get a good bush for $250, but
Well, and
that's what we've been
items,
paying.
item 6, I think, is in the quote that you gave us.
The fencing.
Yeah.
Should have been built into the
Okay.
bid price.
But if they can't do it, does the condo association have any recourse?
No, this is written that we're going to try.
Try,
this out.
okay.
It's a good faith effort. And it looks to both Mark and myself like it could be done, but again,
Yeah.
you never know till you take it apart if it's gonna make it or not. So we didn't want to promise it would, because then we might be rebuilding a fence. We don't want to do that. Yeah, the cost of the turf restoration, we always do seeding anyway, so whether we pay our contractor or pay them
Okay,
is nothing to us. I think they were just looking at if they would rather have native grasses instead of turf lawn grasses, they could at least apply this money to something different.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Don't hear any other discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
hi,
Aye. All
Aye,
oppo-
as well.
Okay,
Sorry.
all opposed, hearing none, the ayes have it.
So that'll go to finance and the council if there's money involved in this one.
Next is Lake Street and Dewey Court reconstruction, set date of public hearing 23-122. So,
Yeah, and I've laid out a tentative schedule for getting bid prices into the assessment schedule, and our best bet, I think, is April 22nd to begin our meeting for that public hearing.
is there any way we can do the 21st?
On Sunday?
Or, excuse me, is there any way we can do a little bit earlier? The
Earlier?
22nd is the first night of Passover.
Oh. Sorry,
I-
we can do later, we can't do earlier.
Okay.
Because there's a mandatory 10 to 40 day
10 to
notice
40 day
period.
notice period, yeah.
Yep,
and I will be gone that night coming back from Reno to see my son. So
all
if
right,
2 of us are missing,
Yeah,
I might,
that can get dicey.
It
So
can.
should we shoot for May 13th instead?
Yeah.
Because assessments really aren't.
I'll be
driven
gone
by
then.
Construction. You'll be gone.
Yeah.
He's done. You're killing me.
But I'm only one
How about you,
person.
Carrie? Anything coming up?
No, I'll be here.
Okay.
I'm only one person and there are other members of the committee that might. take it.
Yeah, so, yeah, sorry, we can move it later. That
Yeah.
May 13th would be all right.
yeah.
Yeah,
I just can't send the notice out then for a bit.
and I have a question about location, given the number of addresses that are on the list. Do we hold it in the council chambers or just keep it here?
No, we typically have that in the council
council
chambers
chamber,
and
okay.
available online.
Okay. And then you had one more question about the addresses. I noticed that there are some buildings that don't appear to have apartment number 2 listed. Is there a reason for that?
I don't know, that information Mark actually gave me.
Okay,
He said that had been used in the recent agreement they reached with the Lake Street apartment folks.
okay.
So I believed that it's exhaustive.
Yeah, it's possible no one's living in those, but, okay. It's interesting that it's only number 2 that's missing.
Yeah, and I didn't get too concerned because this isn't a recorded
Right,
document.
yeah.
It's basically
Okay.
a handshake that got written down, so.
I will make a motion then, to set the date and time to host the public hearing on the Lake Street and Dewey Court reconstruction, assessments, for May 13th at 6:30 PM in the council chambers.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none. May 13th in the council chamber. All right. And next item, we have crosswalk safety on Century Avenue at Park Street.
Yeah, so this is coming back to the committee. We had talked about this previously and the consensus direction I got was to bring it back in March. So here it's March. In the meantime, the police report did get posted, so I had a chance to read through that. It's pretty much what we knew. There was a pedestrian southbound, so crossing Century Avenue from north to south. There was a southbound driver turning right from High Road onto Century Avenue. And for no known reason, there's nothing listed in the report as a contributing factor. The driver drove into the pedestrian. I can't begin to imagine how that happens, but things happen. I've read weirder things, but still, there's no visibility problem. There was no distracted driving that was noted in the report. Specifically noted that there wasn't distracted driving. I don't know how the cop knows that, but.
bad driving.
Just bad. I mean,
Yeah, it's like lack of windshield use or something. I don't know. So there was nothing I could put my finger on and say, oh, we should fix this or we should look into that. It's definitely not a timing issue in this case. It's somebody turned right and didn't look, apparently, because it was broad daylight.
So what action do we need on this? Anything other than acceptance of your analysis?
Well, I don't know what else to do. There was discussion last time about like a leading pedestrian interval, and we do have funding this year to look into that citywide. The Ped Bike Transit Committee asked for that, and so we put in a budget request that's funded. So that's one thing that might make a difference, especially if a pedestrian can get out ahead of a driver. Maybe they're more visible.
I
We
like,
talked about no right turn on red as a possibility. I don't know if this is our most dangerous spot, but it's a
Yeah,
thing to look
doesn't
at.
seem that way.
well, I feel like even if this was the only incident in the past 10 years, I feel like safety measures should be trying to prevent future accidents. I know that you need to have some sort of engineering evidence to indicate this is a problem intersection, but I feel like given we have a lot of students crossing the street there at certain times of day, Red Tail Ridge is going in, so there will be more people both driving and walking, and I hope biking. So I feel like I'd like to see if there are some things we can try at this intersection to be more protective of our pedestrians. And one would be the LPI, since we've got that on the list this year. Could this intersection be a candidate? I also looked up I found the Center for Urban Transportation Research at University of South Florida. They had a study recently, phase 3 of their study addressed things like stop here on red, right turn on red after stop. But the one that caught my eye was turning vehicles yield to pedestrians. And so I printed off for Sean's benefit. It's understanding interactions between drivers and pedestrian features at signalized intersections. And they found that the turning vehicles yield to pedestrians. So signs like this one, if you can see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
Something like that, that lights up when it's needed isn't up all the time so that people start to ignore it, but it, you know, somebody presses the button to cross, that turns on. Just to send
Yeah.
another signal to drivers that you need to pay attention, and I would hope that bad drivers would pay attention.
People do tend to mind the flashing lights if they aren't flashing all the time.
Right. So anyway, I hope we can explore some options for this particular intersection. Again, just given the fact that it's, I mean, you live
Yeah.
nearby. I don't know what your observations are or what you find trying to cross.
I think that intersection has one big issue that we can't fix right now, and a bunch of related issues. The big issue we can't fix right now is that a lot of drivers view Century Avenue going toward the belt line as their own personal drag racing strip. And they drive it at really intense speeds for the road, like 50.
No, no, they don't. 'Cause I drive on that road probably 2-3 times a day. You never see it. I'm sitting there poking along at 32 miles an hour. And people don't pass me,
Really?
really.
On Century?
Century.
Okay,
If I
My experience been different as well. It seems really fast, but that's just anecdotal, right? Like we would need some data.
I mean, I see them get pulled over in front of my house whenever the police do a traffic enforcement thing. Their main stop is directly across from my house, because of where they tend to place the patrol vehicle and where the stop occurs subsequently. And I mean, you have people going down that street like 50. They get pulled over in front of my house.
Through it. Look at their police records for speeding stops on that street and check and what the speeds are that they get.
Well, and there's a difference though
Yeah.
between predominant speeds and outlying speeds.
Yeah.
Because there's always the guy that you notice that's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy fast.
Yeah,
But that's not sort of the 85th percentile speed that we get most wrapped up in. It's, if there are a few, those are the ones that tend to stick in our head.
yeah.
Yeah.
well, and to bring it back to
Yeah.
crosswalk safety,
Yeah.
I feel like the, both crosswalk safety and the speeding issue, those things maybe will be addressed, whenever we get around to doing the road diet study for Century Avenue.
Could help.
But in the meantime, I wonder if investing in signage for this intersection might be worthwhile. It, you know, it can improve safety at this intersection and also help us get a sense for whether or not these would be useful in other places where we've had some problems or reported problems with pedestrian crossing. I know somebody got hit. One of my constituents had a child that got hit. I think she was on her bike at Frank Lloyd Wright in Century as well. Century's.
That's the one that actually seems to be the bigger problem area. That, I mean, normally when I hear about a
heavier
signalized
traffic.
intersection, it's Frank Lloyd Wright or sometimes Allen at Century, which
No, Allen Century is just, there's nothing to be done.
yeah,
Except
well,
for
we're looking
designing
into
it.
different geometrics.
Even
which-
I avoid that intersection because it is crazy. Anyway,
yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough.
So I think what I'm hearing is maybe we send this intersection to Ped Bike and Transit for their recommendations.
sure. Carrie and I are both on that. What do you think, Carrie?
Yeah, sounds good. I mean, we discussed the similar issue on I guess it's Park Lawn and what's the one by Cromrie?
Brookdale?
Yeah, Brookdale. At our last meeting. And I know there they were like looking more, someone was gonna follow up about maybe possible crossing guard. But anyways, I think like we could definitely bring this to the committee. They had a lot of other good ideas as well.
Yeah, it would be good, you know, when we're talking about these things to look sort of in the bigger picture too. It's easy to get focused on one movement at one intersection, but then the other movements at that intersection and other intersections. It makes things a lot more predictable to people if we can do things consistently. You know, that they're not all different somehow or behave differently. So that'd be one of my hopes. Anyway. Whatever we do.
Well, I think there's something to be gained by piloting something before making it consistent across the city.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
saying we have to
Yeah.
do 17 intersections all in one day,
Yeah.
but that we write it in such a way that it is easy to apply to all of them. That's what makes it easier for me instead of like, oh, we did this and then we did this and nobody has any idea what's going on from a expectation point of view. That's all.
All right, well, I guess I'll move to refer this issue to the Ped Bike and Transit Committee.
I'll
I'll
second.
second that.
Oh, Carrie, you can have a second.
All right.
Very slow on the draw there.
Oh, I can't, that's funny. I must not be hearing. There must be a
Yeah,
little
it,
delay. Sorry about that.
I bet our router is sending everything through Denver to get to Atlanta to
Yeah.
get here.
So,
Like the mail.
Right.
Lucky.
Yeah.
all right, we have a motion, we have Carrie as the second. And I think we've exhausted discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none, motion carries. And now we are on to our recycling program.
Yeah. So I had a conversation with DNR staff and I get the impression from my conversation that they have a few staff dealing with an awful lot of recycling people. So it's not very often that I've heard from them. In fact, I don't recall having heard from them proactively in the past, which was nice. They were really helpful and really understanding about what we are doing and what we're not doing. I have had very little understanding of what some of this stuff that we should have been doing and aren't. And so they kind of turned me on like, well, yeah, we should have been doing that. And then it occurred to me, well, we used to have a position that was recycling coordinator, not because we had a Middleton recycling center, but because we had a landfill.
Hmm.
And we had our own recycling coordinator, but that went by the wayside. Oh, boy. 25 years ago. And so when I took over duties of Director of Public Works from Toby, this is not one of the things I was well briefed on. And it's possible not all of these were laws at that time. So I'm learning as I'm going a little bit. And again, I think the DNR was really helpful. It's not that we're out of compliance, but there are some things that were pointed out that we could be better at. So that's why this is on tonight's agenda. Number one, some of our ordinance stuff is not quite right. Apparently, we're referencing state statutes that no longer exist. And I don't think our ordinance is all that old, but things change. It took me a while to find our compliance assurance plan, which is a little thin. It's in our packets here. Maybe a little thin is being generous.
yes. That it refers to the recycling coordinator. So if that person really disappeared 20 years,
Oh.
25 years ago,
Yeah.
that says something.
Yeah, you know.
I'm surprised there's an HTML link on this.
Well, I wrote that.
Predated the internet.
Yeah, that little note in the upper right corner, I wrote after our conversation.
Oh, okay.
And after we found this.
It's page 31.
Oh, yeah. Put your eyes if you ever get there. So I wrote this little note up here like, oh, I should look at what their, template is. Which I found and included in our
Mhm.
packet, so it was a lot easier on the rest of you. And I'm not saying this is terrible, neither was WDNR, it meets their requirements. But they gave us some guidance on, well, these are things you might want to think about, and if something goes wrong, what do you do about it? I should preface all of this by saying we don't really get complaints. Every now and then we hear from Pelletary that they got a complaint. But we've never written it down, and we should have been writing it down. They might be writing it down and we've never requested their records. So I'm not saying that documenting this will take a ton of time if they're already documenting this. It's maybe as simple as once a year getting a printout from them that says who called and complained about something and what was done about it. Right? Usually if there's somebody setting stuff off on the side of the road, it's not recyclable stuff, it's garbage stuff. And that's a different deal entirely. But that goes to our code compliance manager and follow up on that, because that's just illegal dumping. So this more, I think, is focused on either somebody's not providing recycling for their tenants, or for their, making sure that stuff's not all mixed together between garbage and recycling. And we don't have any good way to know that. We don't call all the waste haulers and say, who are your problem children? And what do we do about it? But that's apparently part of this program, is that we're supposed to be doing that. And we haven't been. So
You know if Pelletary logs it?
I don't know that, but they have customer service people that are really, really good. So I gotta believe if they're getting those calls, they're writing them down.
So they get the calls, say it's a homeowner.
Yeah.
What will he complain about? Somebody's filling my recycle bin from next door?
Or it probably would be more like, somebody took my thing, or, you guys didn't pick this up.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
I have too much stuff to fit. What am I supposed to do about it?
Well, they just go to their neighbor.
Right, put it in there. So yeah, if they
And
get
that
those kind of
generates a
complaints.
complaint.
I was a little more mystified by like, well, then how do we start checking into commercial units and
Yeah.
multifamily units to see if they've got recycle bins? I mean, a lot of them are in locked garages or underground.
Mhm.
And if people aren't turning themselves in, I don't know what we're gonna do about it.
And if tenants don't know that they can report problem that their, landlord isn't providing these things, then
Yeah.
that's a problem.
I think
It's
all
apparent-
newer ones have recycle bins, because I know when I lived out in the apartment complex I was in had recycle.
And I suspect they do, but if the complaint is it's not adequate, that's its own.
Well, it's never adequate on the first of the month when people move.
Um,
I don't
Yeah.
even know how you allow for that, but
And then I, found out we have to segregate how we report things based on whether they're 1 through 4 unit residential, we'll call that, or 5 and above, which is multifamily, but that's not considered residential as much as commercial. And then there are all the non-residential, which is other kinds of commercial, institutional, industrial users. So we have to report on those things in separate buckets, but because we allow carts to be issued to commercial and industrial and multifamily units, I think we're going to have a hard time figuring out now which of those carts are where, which is what we'll have to do somehow. I was looking at Fitchburg stuff, but they don't issue carts to anything bigger than 4-unit residential. So multifamilies aren't eligible, but commercial entities aren't eligible. We went a different way.
you provide dumpsters to the bigger commercial
Carts.
carts.
We will allow up to 4 carts per, basically per lot.
Okay.
So there are some commercial buildings that generate very little solid waste.
Yeah, so they could probably work with.
And so they use carts.
Yeah.
Because why would they rent a dumpster?
Mhm.
Or buy their own carts?
Yeah.
And I can get it from a fairness perspective if we say, well, we're taking this out of taxes and commercial owners are paying taxes. Should they be denied the opportunity to use our cart system? So we allowed that, but we have to somehow tag that now as whether they're 1 to 4 unit residential or not. And I think that's gonna take some significant time.
Probably inventorying too, commercial that provide their own.
A lot of commercials use their own, but not all of them do.
Yeah, most, I would say most of T-Wall's buildings probably, they provide their own.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Pretty sure.
Yeah, the apartment complexes anyway.
Because you'd have to get by with 4 sets or
Yeah,
fewer.
that wouldn't work.
That's the max.
Lisa.
So it sounds like we're in compliance or we're not out of compliance, but there's a lot of room for improvement because nothing has been done. No changes have been made, at least since 2019 when the ordinance was written.
Yep.
And possibly, well, for the compliance assurance plan, 20 or 25 years.
It's
So this
old.
sounds like a long-term thing, and I think we're prioritizing our actions. And obviously, the website, including those links, that's easy to do, so that, can be done right away. Updating the solid waste ordinance. I'm inclined to take the easiest route and just work on the template that WDNR provided, and trying to, instead of trying to change our ordinance to match what they've got,
Mhm.
I'd be more inclined to look at how can we just have a separate recycling ordinance or have that be a separate section of the solid waste ordinance. If you read the solid waste ordinance, it's almost like it's written before the time when recycling became a thing, because there is so much reference to solid waste and that, like the recycling ordinance that DNR has is all about recycling. I don't know, I just got the
Yeah,
vibe that this was very old, maybe updated in 2019, but it's very much collection and disposal of solid waste.
kind of started life that way.
Yeah.
And then we got into the recycling
Right.
game. And then I think this was a wholesale change in
Right,
2019 or maybe a little bit before, right? Because this says 2019 doesn't mean this piece was
Right.
written, but
oh, that's true, yeah,
um,
that could be,
I think this was a wholesale rewrite that tried dealing with refuse and recycling all as solid waste and all encompassing in one thing. DNR really only cared about recycling and making sure garbage isn't in the recycling.
but we've got one thing that can be done immediately, one that's probably, a 3-month activity. And then the separately tracking and reporting recycling of residential properties from others. First of all, I'm wondering if Pelletieri might have this information. And then I'm also wondering, can we pay someone to use technology to do this? I'm thinking if there's a spreadsheet that exists that says this card is at this address,
Mhm.
and then there's another spreadsheet that says these are all the commercial properties in Middleton, like somebody should be able to combine those two and like, I can't think of the term, but they should be able to pull out or link each cart to if this is a commercial property or not. It's either commercial or it's residential or it's,
That was sort of my hope too. We do have
Yeah.
part A that you were talking about. We know where every card is assigned.
yeah. So I think,
But I don't
that's
know what does that mean?
right. That's just somebody with the technical expertise in Excel or, databases should be able to do that. And then I'm wondering, this could be a good project for a sustainability intern. Do you know if the planning department is hiring an intern this summer? I think they might be.
Had not heard anything. My initial thought was if we wanted to see if they're willing, but one of the recycle center coordinators
Mhm.
might have some extra time that they're willing to work a few extra hours.
Yeah.
Maybe they would take on some of this.
Yeah, I mean, it
stuff.
could be done manually, but I also think it's worth exploring whether somebody has the technical ability to.
Yeah, doing this manually over all of the tax parcels in the city would be.
Well, all the non-residential.
Yeah, even still,
Mhm.
that's like,
Was Peltier collect data on pounds of recycle and pounds of waste collected at each address?
Oh,
At
well,
each
not
address?
at
My
address.
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 No,
I would say,
a month they'll do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, per month, yeah, okay, that's easy,
Yeah.
but. Yeah. I mean, if you need to break it down to by address and then it becomes easier from there, and I don't know if they do that, although I've certainly heard
It
of
does.
places that. Do that,
commercial
I've heard of that
maybe.
too.
well, commercial, yes,
But not residential.
but
But
I
I've
mean.
heard of them putting strain gauges on their robotic arms so that
Exactly.
they know how much
When
weight
we
they're.
add a GPS and you know your address and Bob's your uncle, right? But only if. Yeah, yeah, talk to Pelletier.
Yeah. I looked in our contract with Pelletier to see if there's anything about this. I mean, they do provide us with reports on quantities, but not not that level of detail, although maybe it's possible. The other thing is the compliance assurance plan, which ties into documenting complaints and responses for the annual report and also inspections. We don't do inspections. In fact, from the reports you send, it looks like we don't spend anything on compliance and enforcement or on education.
Well, we do some education.
Well, but I didn't see any budget for education.
No, we mostly just do that with existing staff hours. We haven't done
Okay.
anything special for that. So we put out our newsletter twice a year. We have website information, you know, when people call, we'll point them to the right place. Most
Does
of the
this-
calls are, I want carts. And we
Right.
say, well, here's Pelletier.
Does this information go on the back of the utility bills, the paper ones that go out? I don't know how many people
think
still
not.
get that.
Typically.
Okay, because I thought like twice a year, sustainability writes up something to put on to distribute with the utility bills and
They
maybe.
can put in a
that-
line or two, I think, on a utility bill. Otherwise, it's a whole separate mailing stuffer.
Well, I know they do something twice a year. They
Okay.
try to get something on the back of something that the
Hmm.
utility is sending out.
I'll have to look into that myself, because I know we have a few characters we're allowed.
Mhm.
One of the other things that the DNR suggested in their letter was if apparently one thing people do is they have recycling information available at polling locations. Or the town hall at election time is what is the phrasing they use in the letter. That's something we could do pretty easily as a test run for the election. And
November.
no, like we could do a quick little test run for the April one.
To
And
see if
then-
anyone picks them up.
Yeah, see if anyone
Okay.
actually looks at them, because people who vote in the spring elections tend to be the most engaged. So if they're ignoring it, then it's probably going to get ignored in.
That'd be my first guess, because I know we have a lot of other voting stuff that sits out and still I have witnessed people get all the way up to the person who first checks their ID. And it turns out they're in the wrong district and they didn't look at the map but they waited in line a while to get told to go somewhere else.
So, yeah, I mean, my thought is like, we could just take it for a test run
We can.
with the upcoming election and maybe have some out by Lori if people come in to vote early.
That's actually done here.
Yeah, they're.
Yeah,
going
oh yeah,
to
that's,
change.
yeah, that's here.
It's not
Oh, that's
by
council
Lori.
chambers now, okay.
So we could put out, I think we just recently sent out a separate thing about rechargeable batteries, because that's a problem that recovery facilities are dealing with. And so we're trying to push that word out, especially to people like, you can't throw these in your garbage. You do bring them in, tape the ends so they don't touch each other.
Yeah,
Something simple like that. We could see if people will pick it up.
And I thought about for the education program, and again, I see this as like an initial conversation about some things that need to be done over the next year.
yeah,
And I don't know if there's like, I really do think it would be good to refer this to sustainability, or even just have you coordinate with Kelly, because she coordinates with all of the sustainability coordinators in the area.
Hmm.
And they might have some things that they do for their education programs that we can steal. I was thinking of like National Night Out or Good Neighbor Festival, if there's a fun recycling game that kids would get into and could have prizes and stuff. You know, just thinking of what do our neighbors do that appears successful? Maybe we can borrow it.
I like that idea a lot. It's a good idea.
Yeah. And when I was talking about the recycling coordinators, I was thinking extra hours mostly for being the ones who try to call
Mhm.
businesses or
Sure.
go check on businesses,
Mhm.
to document like, yeah, we've proactively gone out and done some inspections, which to my knowledge, we've never actually done.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good idea too, Sean. And that's part of educating, right? The businesses as well, right? Like it can kind of be inspection, but also educating them.
Yeah, we might even have to find out who some of them are. Or how to get in touch with them. Apparently, every apartment owner is required to notify each of their tenants when they move in and
Annually.
twice a year, once a
Annually,
year,
our ordinance says annually. I can't remember, maybe DNR is.
to remind them of the
Maybe DNR is
rules.
semi-annually.
And when I lived in an apartment, nobody ever told me anything. They're like, just
Other
go
than when
find
the
it.
rent was,
Your rent is due. Also, there's recycling over there somewhere.
Do you need
Yeah,
motions
so I
on
don't-
this, Sean, or just discussion?
Yeah, it was more like, we have a few things that we should try to pick up on and sort of what are our priorities for trying to tackle them.
So the ordinance needs to go to LNO.
And I might even just start with a call to Matt Fleming to say, if he doesn't mind double checking the statutory references, if those
Yeah.
are broken, they should just get fixed, but. Yeah, otherwise, yeah, if Eleanor wants to propose something that says, well, we're looking at this model and they might just kick it back to us and say, which technical areas do you want to incorporate? I don't know. Usually when things have gone from here to LNO, it's not a blanket referral as much as we want this specific change made.
Yeah.
And if we're wrong, fix it. But I don't know that we've ever sent something to them and just said, we would like a different ordinance.
well, we've got the DNR template, so maybe now we could do something like that. And
Yeah, that's where my thought process was, because if we're talking about really bringing it in line to the DNR template, given how many changes we'd be making, it might make sense to send it there, get a draft, look at the draft, and then send it back or to council.
Yeah. I like that idea.
then is that public works or sustainability? Should be doing.
Well, I think it would be us asking LNO to look at the DNR template and make it work for us. And it should probably come back to us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I guess I'll make that motion if you need a motion.
Just about the LNO part?
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
So I'll move to refer the WDNR recycling ordinance template to License and Ordinance Committee. And request that they send a draft back to us, a modified draft back to us for
Cities.
the city of Middleton. Yep.
I'll second that motion. There, any other discussion on this motion?
I'll just add that I didn't specify a date because we do have a council transition coming up, so
Yeah,
this will probably be a couple months at least.
I think that makes sense.
Couple of months, we can put it back on the agenda, ask them, where is it?
Yeah.
Right, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Hi,
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. For the remaining items, Sean, in your opinion, are any of these going to require additional funding or something that would require that would require us to vote?
Well, certainly when we get into the inspections, sort of the
Yeah.
active measures, that's gonna take some money every year.
Maybe even staff.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it might depend. I think our best option of folks I can think of is if our recycling coordinators are willing to take on some extra hours. That's not terribly expensive, and at least then there's capacity because we're actually increasing hours instead of diverting them.
Mhm.
If they decline, as being sort of well outside their job description, I don't have a good plan B.
Volunteers.
Yeah, there might be somebody that would just say, for the good of the cause, we'll just do it. And it's not like we have to check every business every year.
Mhm.
It's do some here, do some there.
So I think maybe we authorize you to have the conversations you need to have, and then we'll meet on this again in a couple weeks
Yeah,
or a month or.
right.
Yeah.
It might take a little while. This hasn't really been at the very top of my list, but I
Well-
had a few minutes here.
And maybe Kelly Hilliard could reach, through your conversations with her, maybe she could reach out to her counterparts and attend one of our future meetings and, because I know, I mean, the sustainability committee like started out being the recycling center force, right? And that was, a feather in their cap that they helped to get the actual, not the Pelletary pickup, but the the recycling center
Mhm.
right there. So I really think there'd be some interest among the members and certainly, Kelly. Not necessarily to do the work, but to at least weigh in on what could be done, and what some ideas are.
Well, and like you say, if she reaches out to her network,
Yeah.
they might have some ideas of, well, here's how we do inspections.
Right.
Or here's how we document things, get information, because
Yep.
we haven't even had a track record of that.
Mhm. Good, that's exciting.
See, it's not the word I was gonna pick. It is, I think, helpful. And again, I think DNR was really helpful in having the conversation and pointing us to some ideas.
Right, so sounds like Sean, you're going to have a few conversations, and then when it's time for it to end up in additional staff work or something else, it'll be back on the agenda.
Yeah, and if in the meantime, any of you have any thoughts about things we're missing or could do better, toss them my way. You know me, looking for something to do.
All right. I'm hearing no other discussion on the recycling program, so let's move on to Agenda item number 6, the appointment of Brandon Lang as a member of the Conservancy Lands Committee. Brandon is willing to serve, and I do not have the capacity to serve on 2 committees right now. I just had my second son.
I got that.
So I'm very grateful to Brandon for taking that on, and I am appointing him to be the PWC designate for the Conservancy Lands Committee.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
I totally support Brandon doing that and you appointing him, and that's great. The 2 things, one, the CLC may wind up merging with PRFC, just a, we haven't gotten a heads up from those committees yet, but that's proposed.
They're a little reluctant.
Yes, but yeah. And then does Brandon need to reapply to stay on Public Works? Because I think his appointment was filling somebody's appointment who
Oh,
the term would have expired this year.
I forgot about that,
So
but
I-
it might be so.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that's not missed if he needs to reapply. And then also, just to note, there will be at least 1 new alder and maybe 2 new alders serving on Public Works. And I checked the ordinance, and those folks, their appointments become effective as of the organization meeting of the council. So the second
Second of April.
You
meeting, well, I don't know what Mayor Kuhn will do.
Oh, okay,
But the
okay.
22nd.
So there may be 2 new.
Right. Alder Wilkes isn't running for reelection, so she'll be replaced, and we'll see what happens with my seat.
So we've exhausted discussion on item number 6, which gives us item number 7, future meeting agenda items. Lisa, do you have
I have
anything?
nothing.
Don, do you have anything?
No.
Carrie, do you have anything?
No,
Sean? Oh, wait,
This stuff.
no, it's-
I also have nothing. We have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
thanks, everyone.
Hi, Carrie.
Right here.